Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, I'm Vionica Caresta and I'm from Group 2. I'm going to deliver the first and the second topic in our material, which is about methodology in TEFL. But before we go into our main topic, let me tell you a brief explanation about the meaning of method itself. So, method is an organized, orderly, systematic, and well-planned procedure aimed at facilitating and enhancing students' learning. Method also has a purpose to make teaching and learning more efficient and effective. Okay, now we're moving to our main topic. So the first topic is about the grammar translation method. So the grammar translation method is method that instructs students in grammar and provides vocabulary with direct translations to memorize. The objective is that by the time they leave college, the pupil have mastered the vocabulary, grammar, and also orthography, and to be able to read, understand, and write text in various contexts. Okay, the next is about history of the grammar translation method. So, in the Western world, from the 17th to 19th century, foreign language learning available was generally Latin or Greek, both supposed to promote the intellect of the speaker over and above offering communicative benefits. At that time, importance was placed on grammatical rules, syntactic structures, memorizing vocabulary, and also translations of literary text. There was no provision for the oral use of the languages. Late in the 19th century, the classical method came to be known as the grammar translation method. Okay, the next is about characteristic of the grammar translation method. The first characteristic is the unit of teaching is word, not a sentence. It means that a vocabulary is taught in the form of isolated words. The second characteristic is it considers grammar as a soul of language. The third characteristic is grammatical rules of teaching English are explained into mother tongue. And the fourth, this method doesn't help in development of linguistic competence of learner. The fifth characteristic is English grammar is taught through rules, translations, definition, and comparative study of mother tongue grammar. And the sixth is grammar is taught deductively. And the last is reading and writing are the major focus. Okay, so the second topic that I'm going to deliver is about the direct method. So the direct method, or sometimes also called as natural method, is a method that avoids using the learner's native language and just uses the target language. This method places great stress on correct pronunciation and the target language from outset. So this method began around of the 19th century when Francois in the art of learning and studying foreign language described his harrowing experiences of learning German, which helped him gain insights into the intricacies of language teaching and learning. But unfortunately, after a year of studying German language, he ends with the failure. Because of this failure, he decided to return to France, which is his hometown. Quinn discovered that his 3-year-old nephew had managed to become a chatterbox in French, which is that got him thinking. After that, he began observing his nephew and came to the conclusion that language learning is a matter of transforming perceptions into conceptions and then using language to represent these conceptions. So, equipped with this knowledge, he set about devising a new methodology. It was against this background that the series method was created, which taught learners a series of connected sentences that are easy to understand. But unfortunately, this approach of language learning was short-lived, and only a generation later gave place to direct method, decided by Charles Berlitz. So the basic tenet of Berlitz's method was the second language learning is similar to first language learning. In this like, there should be lots of oral interactions, spontaneous of the language, no translation, and little if any analysis of grammar rules and syntax. In short, with instruction conducted in the target language and inductive approach to grammar, the method attempts to emulate language acquisition that children go through when learning a language for the first time. So the direct method enjoyed a great popularity at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of 20th, but it was difficult to use mainly because of the constraints of budget, time, and also classroom size. And yet, after a period of decline, this method was revived, leading to the emergence of the audiolingual method. Okay, so for the characteristic of this method is the first, in this method there is a direct tie to the target language. So the child thinks in the target language and expresses it in the target language. The second is the teaching unit is the sentence. So the teacher performs activities like that which tell the meaning of the sentence in its context. Also, the teacher takes actions related to sentences that show the meaning of the sentence. The next characteristic is the jump method is full of activity. So the teacher shows the object or takes action to clarify the concept. The next characteristic is direct method is interesting and suitable for students. The next characteristic, which is the fifth, is the teacher shows the meaning of sentences with the help of gestures, postures, and also the actions. This allows students to build direct relationships concepts with words and expressions. And the last characteristic of this method is the teaching and learning process is carried out in full English. Okay, so that's all from me. The next material will be delivered by my friend Tasya.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Tasya Marsanda Hafifah, and next I will explain about the material, the audiolingual method. The audiolingual method has students listen to or view recording of language model acting in situation. Students practice with a variety of drills, and the instructor emphasizes the use of the target language at all times. It's a non-communicative approach to teaching that involves heavy use of mimicry, imitation, and drill. Speech and listening and not writing is emphasized. So, this method is the student who plays a role by listening and applying with action. History of the audiolingual method. The outbreak of World War II instigated the need for Americans to become early proficients in the languages of their allies and enemies alike. To this end, elements of the work method were appropriated in order to form and support a new method, the Army method, later becoming known as the audiolingual method. Its foundation was based on psychology and linguistic theory, which is drawing on scientific analysis of a number of languages conducted by American linguists such as Leonard Bloomfield. Conditioning and habit-forming models of learning put forward by behavioral psychologists were married with pattern practice and repetition drills giving rise to the audiolingual method. Its popularity went after 1965, partly because of a critique by Will Gary First in her book The Psychologist and the Foreign Language Teacher, exposing its shortcomings. It fell short of promoting communicative ability, and later studies show that it deprived students of developing ways of processing new language information in their own minds. It also limited the role of context, culture, and word knowledge. Ultimately, ultimately, it had been discovered that language was not simply acquired through a process of habit formation alone, and errors were not necessary bad formations when attempting to gain communicative ability. Today, elements of this method can be used sparingly to reinforce concepts. Characteristic of the audiolingual method: 1. No material is presented in the form of dialogue. 2. There is dependence of mimicry and present memorization. And 3. The arrangements are arranged in a constructive analysis and talk at the same time. 4. Set patterns are taught in repetitive exercises. 5. There is a little or no explanation about grammar because grammar is taught inductively. 9. Vocabulary is very limited and studied in certain contexts. 7. Many use recording devices, language laboratories, and teaching aids. 8. It is very important to use correct pronunciation. 9. Very few use the mother tongue, but exception for teachers. 10. Successful response will continue to be strengthened. Silent way. The silent way is discovery learning approach. It is also often considered to be humanistic approach. It is called silent way because teacher is usually silent, leaving class for the students to talk and explore language. The story of silent way. The silent way is characterized by a problem-solving approach to learning. Categno in 1972 provided that it is in learners' best interest to develop independence and autonomy with cooperating with one another in solving language problems. The teacher is supposed to be silent, hence the name, and must distance himself of the tendency to explain everything. This methodology came in for an onslaught of criticism. It was considered harsh and not conducive to learning. If the teacher was distant, they said there is something to be taken from independence and cooperative between learners, the silent way promoted. Characteristic of silent way, general characteristic according to Stevik 1980. One, teaching must be a subordinate element of learning. Two, learning is not just a process of imitation or training. Three, the teacher tries not to interfere in teaching activities. Four, when working, learners must try to relate the various experiences gained during learning the first language. General characteristic according to Carambelas 1971. One, repetition and imitation should be avoided. Two, learners are only given the opportunity to listen once. Three, learning materials are never shown in memorization aspect. Four, teachers rarely make correction because learners are considered capable of correcting themselves. Five, speaking activities are carried out after doing writing exercise. Six, if necessary, learners are responsible for their learning process. Enough for me. Next, material delivered by Ella.
I'm Ella Trianisa. I will continue the material about communicative language teaching. Communicative language teaching, or CLT, is approach interaction as both the means and the ultimate goal of learning a language. CLT involves many classroom activities like group work, language game, role play, and question answer session. It is not confined to any set of the textbook. The learners are mostly introduced text based and problem solving situation. Maksudnya di sini yaitu pengajaran bahasa komunikatif or CLT adalah pendekatan pengajaran bahasa yang menekankan interaksi sebagai sarana dan tujuan akhir dari belajar bahasa itu sendiri. CLT ini melibatkan banyak kegiatan kelas seperti kerja kelompok, permainan peran, dan ada juga sesi tanya jawab. Di sini pelajar sebagian besar diperkenalkan situasi berbasis tugas dan pemecahan masalah. The next, history of communicative language teaching. The origin of communicative language teaching, or CLT, are to be found in the change in the British language teaching traditional dating from the late 19th and 60s. Situational language represents the major British approach to teaching language as a foreign language. In situational language teaching, language was taught by presenting basic structure in meaningful situation-based activities. The next characteristic of communicative language teaching. The main characteristic of CLT is combination of language aspect functionally and structurally. Functionally, or CLT, emphasize how the language is used. While structurally, CLT emphasize the system or language rules. Even so, in this application, the functional portion is greater than the structural portion because the teaching about language rules are not given directly, but are implicit in the learning process. Dan ciri utama dari CLT itu sendiri adalah perpaduan aspek kebahasaan secara fungsional dan struktural. Dilihat dari secara fungsional, CLT menekankan pada bagaimana bahasa tersebut digunakan. Sedangkan secara struktural, CLT menekankan pada sistem atau aturan bahasa itu sendiri. The next material about participatory learning. Participatory learning is allowing the student to offer ideas and feedback about what goes on in the classroom. Participatory learning empowers the student and thus encourage their intrinsic motivation to participate in classroom activities. This provides a better learning environment in the classroom for all students and teachers. Jadi, pembelajaran ini memungkinkan siswa menawarkan ide dan umpan balik apa yang terjadi di kelas. Pembelajaran ini memperdayakan siswa dan dengan bagaimana meningkatkan motivasi mereka untuk berpartisipasi dalam kegiatan. Kegiatan ini meliputi saat bermain game. Contohnya, siswa diminta saran untuk daftar topik yang akan digunakan dalam game tersebut. Siswa juga diperbolehkan membuat nama tim, bahasa Inggris mereka sendiri, dan memilih anggota tim untuk bermain game tersebut. Next, characteristic of participatory learning. There are 4 characteristics. Number 1, educator place themselves in a position that does not all know all the learning material. Educator view student as a source that has useful value in learning activities. Maksud dari karakteristik ini yaitu pendidik di sini menempatkan diri pada kedudukan yang tidak serba mengetahui bahan ajar. Di sini dia memandang peserta didik sebagai sumber yang mempunyai nilai bermanfaat dalam kegiatan pembelajaran tersebut. Characteristic number 2, educator motivates student to participate in preparing learning objective, learning material, and step to be taken in learning activities. Di sini pendidik melakukan motivasi terhadap peserta didiknya supaya berpartisipasi, menyusun tujuan belajar dan langkah-langkah apa saja yang akan ditempuh dalam kegiatan pembelajaran nantinya. And the next characteristic number 3, educators together with student carry out mutual learning activities by exchanging idea about the content, process, and result of learning activities, as well as about way and step for developing learning experience for the next future. Pendidik di sini bersama peserta didik melakukan kegiatan saling belajar dengan cara bertukar pikiran mengenai isi, proses, dan hasil kegiatan pembelajaran, serta tentang cara-cara dan langkah-langkah pengembangan pengalaman belajar untuk masa berikutnya. And the last characteristic, educator develop group learning activities, pay attention to individual interests, and help students to optimize response to stimuli phase and learning activities. Di sini, pendidik mengembangkan kegiatan pembelajaran berkelompok, memperhatikan minat perorangan, dan membantu peserta didik untuk mengoptimalkan respon terhadap stimulus yang dihadapi dalam kegiatan pembelajaran. Okay, the next material continue by my friends David.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is David Bakhrul Khoir. I will explain about total physical response, TPR. TPR involves giving comment to which student reacts. TPR is great for all ages, and especially beginners, as it allows them to learn the L2, while giving them time to maximize the potential of their silent period. The first comment is given by the teacher, and then it is possible to let the student given the comment. The lesson itself is not focused on grammar, but focused on meaning. TPR answer the question of what to do with absolute beginners. After the teacher demonstrates the meaning of the sound he utters, the student recognize the sound and play it. The cognitive value of this exercise is absorbed by student. Second topic is history of total physical response, TPR. Method was developed by Dr. James G. Asser, a professor of psychology at San Jose State College. Asher had been experimenting with ways of facilitating what he called first trial learning, or the internationalization of new information by the brain upon the first exposure to that information. Since its founding in the 1960s, TPR has become widely recognized throughout the United States, Canada, and Europe. Studies by Asher and others have shown the effectiveness of the method in improving student listening comprehension and vocabulary retention compared to traditional learning methods. The last topic is the characteristic of total physical response, TPR, physical action and student activities, a listener and performer, and individually and collectively. Let's say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.